Hey, what's up guys, and welcome to 61 Shaman, the Cleric's melee DPS soul. Recently Shaman received a flat 6% damage increase from a few passive skills in the soul tree, really helping it scale a lot better and finally offering a more competitive melee DPS spec option for Clerics. So in this guide I'll show you where to spend your soul points, which masteries to select, and finally how to do the single target and AoE rotation. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So looking at the soul tree breakdown, you'll see we got the full 61 points in Shaman. That is because the level 61 ability or 61 point in ability Furious Assault will reduce your global cooldown by 0.5 seconds, which is a pretty big deal. So moving over to Druid, we got 7 in Druid, 5 in Speak Softly, and 2 in Mercurial. Speak Softly gives you a 10% wisdom increase, and Mercurial gives you a 4% increase in damage done with instant abilities, which in this spec, all your abilities will be instant. As an added bonus, you also pick up Combined Effort, which is a 30k damage ability, at least with my gear, and will also give you a buff that increases your damage by 5%. So moving over to the third soul, we got 8 in Inquisitor. We take 5 in Planar Study for 10% spell power increase, and 3 in Corporal Punishment for a 3% damage increase. With 8 in Inquisitor, you also pick up Sanction Heretic, which with our level 63 mastery will also apply Vex, but we'll talk about that here momentarily. So moving over to the masteries, level 61, we take Soul Collector. Soul Collector allows Ekkehard's Grasp to apply Frostbite. Ekkehard's Grasp is a ranged magic ability. For those of you who don't know, the main kind of mechanic of Shaman is that you're going to be alternating between magic abilities and physical abilities, or non-physical and physical. So with this one, this is going to be a magical ability, and your magical abilities, all of them in Shaman, will apply Frostbite, which makes your next physical damaging ability deal 30% more damage. Well, Ekkehard's Grasp wasn't included in that, but with this level 61 mastery, it now is, giving you some good ranged capability. So moving up to 62, we take Blessing of Penitence. This will make the range of your Fervent Strike from the Druid tree be 20 meters instead of being in melee range. So between level 61 and level 62, this really increases your disconnect capability as a Shaman. Moving up to 63, we take Face Freedom. This is going to allow your Sanction Heretic from the Inquisitor tree to now apply Vex, which is these two abilities here. Moving up to 64, we take Diversify. This is going to give you a 5% increase in damage. And of course, level 65, we take Punishing Strike. Punishing Strike will count as a physical attack, and it will also refresh the active Frozen Wrath on the enemy, as well as apply the Combined Effort buff, which is that 5% flat damage increase buff, to the Cleric when cast. So now that we talked about the soul points and the masteries, let's go ahead and jump into the macros really quick. So looking at the macros here, you can see we got the non-physical macro, or the magic macro here. We're going to have Frozen Wrath, which is going to be one of your heavy damage over time abilities. Glacial Strike is going to be an ability that you can only cast when the enemy is below 30%, but it's going to be a nice little DPS boost sub 30%. Jolt, if you don't want to manage that separately, you can put it in this macro. Through my testing, I did about a series of 10 parses or so, testing how often Jolt goes off without a critical hit, and it was roughly 90% or so. It wouldn't, and that was on a dummy. So in a raid environment, when your critical hit chance is higher, chances are your Jolt is going to have closer to 100% cast time following a critical hit. So moving on down, we got Icy Blow. That's going to be your ranged magic spammer, your melee magic spammer. Ekkehard's Grasp is going to be your ranged magic spammer. And of course, Lightning Hammer is there just in case your back is turned to the enemy. Lightning Hammer is one of those abilities that you can still cast when your back is turned to the enemy. Moving on down, we got the physical macro. We got Massive Blow. That's your biggest, hardest hitting ability. We got Punishing Strike, which is next up. We got Combined Effort. Crushing Blow is going to be your melee DPS spammer. Fervent Strike, of course, is going to be your ranged physical spammer. And then, of course, we also throw Lightning Hammer in the bottom of the physical macro. Just in case your back gets turned to the enemy, you'll still be able to fire off something. Moving on down, we got the Rage of the North Deep Freeze macro. Rage of the North is going to apply 10 stacks of 10% crit chance, giving you a total 100% crit chance. Every time you crit, it will remove one of those stacks. Pretty big DPS cooldown there, which is why we paired up with Deep Freeze, which will stun 5 enemies. But the big part of it is it increases the damage taken from the Cleric on all affected foes by 50% for 3 seconds. So if you use these together, you're effectively increasing your DPS by quite a bit. So moving on, we got the 2 AoE macros here. The first one is going to be your Avalanche macro. It's going to cast Frozen Wrath, and then after you use this macro to cast Frozen Wrath, you'd swap to your Spread macro to cast Strike of the Maelstrom and spread your Frozen Wrath, and then of course you would move back to do this macro and alternate between the two. But I'll talk more about that in the AoE section. Moving on up, I have the 2 buffs that you can use for changing your between single target buff and AoE buff. So this buff right here will make the weapon attacks deal an additional 2,000 damage. The AoE version does 1,000 damage, but up to 5 enemies. The only reason I have these as macros is so that I can label them ST and AE, so I can remember it a little easier. You can see them there. So moving on down to this macro here, this is my opener macro. This is typically what I use in a raid to make sure that I give the support classes enough time to get Flaring, Power, Orchestra, and all that jazz out. So you'll cast Sanction Heretic first, followed by Frozen Wrath, which will give you the Frostbite buff. Then you'll cast Combined Effort, which will consume that Frostbite buff and also give you the 5% Combined Effort damage increase buff, followed by Lightning Hammer, which will again give you that Frostbite buff, and then you'll go into your normal rotation, but we'll explain more about that later. So moving on down, we got the Shield macro. You do get 2 shields. They're both kind of crappy. They're just absorb 25% of damage taken up to 5,000 damage or so. If you want to throw those in your macro, you can, but they do use mana, and they're not really that great. So totally up to you. Moving on down even further, we got the K alerts here. This is just my K alert macro. So that's it for the macros, guys. Let's go ahead and talk about what buffs I use and what's on the action bar. So for buffs, of course we have Furious Assault. This is going to be your most important buff. When you cast this, it's going to reduce your global cooldown by 0.5 seconds, as well as apply all of your Courage buffs. So moving over to the right, we got Armor of Devotion. This increases your critical hit chance by 5%. This is from the Inquisitor tree. One more, we got Glory of the Chosen. This causes weapon attacks to heal you. One more, we got Heart of the Frozen Sea. This increases the resistances by 130 and all party or raid members. This will typically be overwritten in a raid. Moving over to the right, one more, we got the single target and AoE buffs here. You choose which one you need based on what the scenario is. If you're fighting one creature or one mob, you'll want to hit the single target one. If you're fighting multiple, you'll want to make sure you toggle on Vengeance, the Primal North, or the AE one. Of course, we got the K alert macro here. Moving on down, we have the opener macro on the Z key. We have the Rage of the North / Deep Freeze macro on the Q key. We have Rush of Strength. This is going to reset the cooldown on your Massive Blow on the E key. I do have my Jolt on the R key because before I started doing the research and started doing the parsing and such for this guide, I did manage it separately, but I noticed that by throwing it in the macro, I actually saw a DPS increase of approximately 1,500 or so average over all the parses that I did. Moving over to the right, we got Punishing Strike. This is going to be basically just so I can monitor the cooldown there because it's in your physical macro. Deep Freeze, again, this is just so I can monitor the cooldown. One more, we got Mana Potions. Mana Potions are a staple for Clerics. A lot of the builds that we use are pretty mana hungry, so having them on hand is really nice. If you do get the 6,000 mana ones, the 6518 mana ones, they're a little cheaper than the 7,000 mana ones, so you can stockpile them. Moving over to the right, one more, we got Ageless Ice. This is going to restore 7% mana, but also snare you for 5 seconds. This is going to be your main mana regeneration ability there. Moving down to the main bar, we got the Magic or non-physical macro. Number 2, we got the physical macro. Number 3, we got Sanction Heretic, which is also going to apply Vex, if you remember, from our level 63 mastery. Number 4, we got Lightning Hammer, which is going to be another damage over time ability. Number 5 and 6, we have our 2 AoE abilities. Number 5 is going to first cast our Frozen Wrath. 6 will be used to spread them, and then we'll move back to 5, 6, 5, 6. Again, we'll talk about it more in the area of effect section. 7 is going to be your Gap Closer, Ride the Lightning. 8 is going to be your 2 shields. Don't mash this, you just hit it once for the first shield and once for the second shield. Snowbank, snares for 8 seconds, not really used for PvE very much, but can be used for PvP. 0, if you've watched any of my guides, I have this mapped to my middle click and I put important stuff on it like interrupts and cleanses, so this is my interrupt. Moving over to the right, we got our Break Free, and one more, we got Windwalk, which is going to be a 50% movement buff for 15 seconds. As an added bonus, it also increases your dodge chance by 35%. So that's it for the buffs and what's on the action bar, guys. Let's go ahead and take a look at the K alerts here real quick. So looking at the K alerts, we do track a few things here. So we're going to go ahead and take a look. So if you look down here, the first one you'll see is that this one right here says physical. This is going to be your Frostbite ability. So every time you cast a magic ability, you'll see this little guy pop up. And you'll know you have to hit a physical ability after that. So this is really nice, especially if you lose yourself in your rotation or there's a movement phase and you kind of get lost with where you're at or where you were at in your rotation. This is nice to kind of pick up where you left off. Moving over to the left, we got the Deep Freeze, which will tell you how much longer you have until Deep Freeze wears off. It's a 3-second timer. And then, of course, you have Rage of the North here, which will tell you how many stacks you have left of Rage of the North. Nice little indicators there. Down at the bottom, you'll see we have 5 different damage over time abilities here. First one is Frozen Wrath. That's your biggest. Lightning Hammer is next, followed by Vex and Sanction Heretic. These two will always be cast together. And of course we have Brutalize. Brutalize is a 2-second or 3-second damage over time ability that you get from Massive Blow. Whenever you cast Massive Blow, it will deal 45% of its damage in the form of Brutalize every time you cast it. So that's why it's important to try and make that guy crit and try to make sure that you catch it or you combine that with Deep Freeze, because your Brutalize will be affected by that. So that's it for the K alerts, guys. Let's go ahead and talk about the single target rotation. So the first thing you're going to want to do is select your target. In this case, we're selecting the Raid Boss Practice Dummy. If you're not in melee range, you're going to want to use your Gap Closer, Ride the Lightning, to get into melee range. At that point, you're going to start in your opener. You're going to hit it 4 times. It is on the Z key. After you're done with that, you're going to hit your Rage of the North Deep Freeze macro twice. At that point, you'll move into your physical macro, and then you'll hit your 1 macro with your E macro in the same block there, and then you'll hit your Massive Blow again because it'll be reset from your Rush or Strength. At that point, you're going to move into your 1 macro again and then alternate between your 1 and 2 until you need to cast Sanction Heretic and Lightning Hammer again. Before you have to refresh these, you should hit a physical macro and then refresh those, because Lightning Hammer will give you the Frostbite buff. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. So we got our boss selected. We're already in melee range here. We're going to go ahead and start with the opener. We're going to hit it 4 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, QQ2, 1E, 2. And now we're going to go just our 1, 2 button. So we're going to be hitting this. We're going to be moving through our non-physical and physical attacks for a while. You can see we're pulling in the high 60s. We're going to refresh our Sanction Heretic and Lightning Hammer. We'll move into 2 again, 1, 2 again for Massive Blow, and we're going to keep working through those non-physical and physical abilities again. You can see that Jolt is proccing quite a bit, and we're not even in a raid. We don't even have the increased raid critical hit chance increases. So, you know, in a raid it'll probably even have a higher uptime. So now we're going to wait for Massive Blow to come off of cooldown here, and then we're going to do a back-to-back 1E2 again to put us back up into the 57, 58 range there. We're going to refresh Sanction Heretic and Lightning Hammer again, and then immediately go into Massive Blow, followed by another Jolt, and then we're back into the 1-2 spam again. So there's a couple extra things you got to manage, and Shaman is based off of more a priority system than anything. However, it's definitely not bad to play, and it's really rewarding. It scales very well with DPS cooldown, so you can see that our Rage of the North is up, so now we're going to go 1 QQ, 2, 1, 2, and we're going to move right back into it. You can see now that we got our Rage of the North up, we're probably going to shoot up into the 60s hopefully here. So not too bad, especially for being on a dummy and being self-buffed. And again, I just forgot Sanction Heretic there. If I wasn't narrating, I could probably give you a more accurate representation of what this looks like. Over 4 minutes earlier, I think I ended it at like 58.9 or something or so on the dummy. So that's definitely not bad for my gear set, especially when Shaman wasn't performing anywhere near that before. So, but that's it, guys. If you have any questions, as always, please let me know. We'll go ahead and move into the AoE rotation, and we will wrap this up. So for the AoE rotation, the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to select a dummy, which is going to be the closest one to you because these are melee abilities. And the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to hit your Q key twice, which is going to fire off your Rage of the North and also your Deep Freeze. And then you're going to want to go to town hitting your 5 key first, which is going to cast your Frozen Wrath, hitting your 6 key, which is going to cast your Strike of Maelstrom, which will spread your Frozen Wrath, and then alternating again between 5 and 6, 5 and 6, 5 and 6 until the end of time. So here we go. We're going to start this off. So we're going to hit the Q key twice, followed by the 5 key, the 6 key, 5 key, the 6 key into eternity. So we're going to keep going with this. We're pulling in the neighborhood of 460 or so. It's kind of moving around a lot currently, but not too shabby there. Pretty decent DPS for what it is. You also want to make sure you got your AoE buff turned on, of course, your Vengeance of the Primal North. Make sure you do that beforehand. Pretty important stuff there. So you can see that when we hit our 5 key, it's applying our Frostbite. When we hit our 6 key, it's consuming that Frostbite. So that's why we're doing the alternating here. You can see that our Frozen Wrath is about to fall off. So we're going to refresh that with 5 again and respread it with 6. So you can see we're still in the 140s or so, which actually is not bad at all, considering that our abilities can only hit 5 enemies. So not too bad at all. But that's all there is to the AoE rotation, guys. As always, if you have questions, please let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.